We are T minus 72 hours and change away from the unprecedented spectacle of a sitting American president debating a former American president, the latter of whom, just to spice things up, also happens to be a 34-time convicted criminal, 34-time convicted crook, a scofflaw with 34 scarlet Fs scrawled across his rap sheet. If Donald Trump, the felon in question, gets his way, the first and maybe only presidential debate of 2024 this Thursday in Atlanta will be less Lincoln Douglas or even Kennedy Nixon than Macho Man Randy Savage versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Those are wrestlers, for the record. Remember, the chain of events that led President Biden to be facing off against a felon ran through the Manhattan criminal courthouse via the hush money case brought against Donald Trump by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who has received a litany of heinous threats. Threats that the Manhattan DA's office argued were, quote, directly connected to Trump's dangerous rhetoric. And yet, in one of the other venues where the former president is facing grave legal peril, the wheels of justice appear to be spinning very, very slowly, possibly in reverse. That venue is the federal courtroom in Florida, where Judge Eileen Cannon is at this very moment hearing arguments in the classified documents case, including over the question of whether to modify the bond conditions of Trump's release and a special request from special counsel Jack Smith, quote, for a gag order limiting the former president's rhetoric about FBI agents involved in the case. That's a reference to when back in May, Trump, quote, twisted the meaning of boilerplate instructions to FBI agents about limits on their use of lethal force, and instead accused the Department of Justice of authorizing the use of deadly force during the Mar-a-Lago search. Or as Trump put it in a fundraising email to his supporters, quote, President Biden was locked and loaded, ready to take me out. Now, that is precisely the kind of rhetoric and distortion that Donald J. Trump is known for, and it's also precisely why Jack Smith believes that Trump has earned himself a grade A USDA choice beef top shelf gag order, an argument that he laid out in a withering filing ahead of today's hearing. Quote, in late May 2024, Donald Trump made a series of false and inflammatory public statements about the law enforcement professionals who conducted the court-authorized search at Mar-a-Lago, telling his audience that the FBI was out to kill him and his family. The quote goes on. Trump knew that this was false, and he intended that his comments would inflame his listeners. Indeed, that was the whole purpose. There is no question that his statements were intentionally false, that they were designed to inflame and anger his audience, and that he knew that his statements would do so. Every court to have examined the issue has recognized the threat caused by the longstanding and well-documented dynamic between Trump's comments and the predictable response from some of his supporters. Quote continues, here, common human experience leaves no question of the imminently foreseeable harm posed by Trump's knowingly false and inflammatory accusation of an FBI plot to murder him and his family. Three of those words bear repeating. Imminently foreseeable harm. That was posed by Trump's knowingly false and inflammatory accusations. And that is where we start this hour with former top official at the Department of Justice and MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann, plus U.S. Senator and co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast. Man, it's awesome. Claire McCaskill and former Republican Congressman and MSNBC political analyst David Jolly. MSNBC's Katie Phang is inside that Florida courthouse, and we hope to have her join us as soon as she's able. Andrew Weissmann, I start with you, as I always do. It's a matter of common courtesy and deference to your genius. What's going on down there in Florida today?
Well, one of the things people should know is that the way that Judge Cannon runs her courtroom, in contrast to the Judge Merchan courtroom, is that there are no laptops, there's no telephones, nothing that you can use to communicate. So that's why it's slower than when we had the ability to get immediate tweets and information from Judge Merchan's courtroom from the insiders who were there. So we know that both on Friday and this morning, she heard an issue about the constitutionality of the appointment of the special counsel. That's an issue that has been decided by every court that has addressed it against the people challenging the appointments of special counsels, whether Republicans or Democrats. And then this afternoon is the very, very belated oral argument that the judge scheduled on, John, what you affirmed as the changing of the bail conditions to impose additional restrictions on what the former president can say. And that's one also, when you think about that, how that's been addressed in D.C. and in New York, we have had a situation where the former president has needed to be under a gag order because of these, as you put it, his false statements that pose imminent harm to people either who are witnesses, jurors, court staff, or prosecution staff. So we'll see what Judge Cannon does. One thing I am keeping my eye out for is if she does not rule for the government here, I can easily see them taking this up to the Court of Appeals to get it reversed for a third time.
Andrew, I follow you relentlessly and religiously on Twitter, and I saw a tweet of yours that talked about the state of affairs at Aileen Cannon's courtroom. You compared it to Judge Merchan's. Judge Merchan, you thought ran a really tight ship, right? Right? Well done.
Absolutely.
Right.
First-rate judge.
First-rate judge who ran a first-rate courtroom. Aileen Cannon, not so much. Here's the tweet. A tweet where you likened Cannon's courtroom to being so backed up. In this case, it's like planes over LaGuardia on a holiday. I will say it's a very New York thing that shows your New York roots. I would, for people in the Midwest would say it backed up like planes over O'Hare, but it's a similar idea. I ask you the question I ask you all the time about Aileen Cannon as you talk about her. It's the inescapable question. Politically biased, bozo, or both?
Boy, it's this like that game show where it's, do you want behind the curtain or within the box? So I actually think it's both. There's no question she is inexperienced, and she does not have the tools to handle a case that's this complicated. That's clear. There's, everyone's seen that. We also do have the fact that the 11th Circuit, a conservative circuit that she is in, reversed her not once but twice. And those were conservative judges who just thought she was absolutely bonkers in terms of her rulings. And of course, both times that she was overturned, her rulings were for Trump. It's not like she's inexperienced and sometimes she gets it right for Trump and sometimes she gets it right or wrong for the government. They're always siding with Donald Trump, and it's very, very hard at this point to see her as being anything other than partisan. Let me just give you one reason that I and other people are particularly perturbed about the timing of her scheduling this argument on the gag order. The government raised this issue almost a month ago with her saying that there's a real concern about danger to law enforcement from these false statements. And she initially rejected the filing. She said it needs to be refiled because you didn't, yes, you conferred with the other side, which is required, but I don't think you conferred enough. So she actually bounced the filing and said, you need to confer enough. That was sort of meaningless because, of course, the other side didn't agree to it. They never were going to agree to it. They said they didn't agree to it. And so that delayed it. And then she put it on this very slow trajectory where we finally are today having this heard. Can you imagine? The allegations are that law enforcement is being harmed here. There's a grave risk of harm. Even if she thought ultimately she was going to rule against the government, you would want to hear that as soon as humanly possible. It just shows such incredible cavalier attitudes about safety, and that cavalier attitude about safety is what got her reversed twice in the 11th Circuit, where they said she was showing really cavalier attitudes towards the national security of the United States. So again, I think it's worth really keeping an eye on this, because if she does not rule for the government, this is one where it easily could go up on appeal.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.